Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Tiefertiller, Rhys Tiefertiller. We're joined by Dwain McFarland on the Fantasy Football Predictive Analytics podcast. Dwain, how goes it?
Man, I'm doing great. Just glad to be on the show. You guys having a good day? You guys what's been the argument today? What football argument?
We have them a lot. I'd have to see what. And the best part about it is, for me, and it's like fancy Twitter. Fancy Twitter is everybody's love and hate because we're arguing over probabilities. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. We can't like dig our heels in too much because what are we really arguing about? Whether a certain player has a 75% chance of being excellent or 47%. You know what I mean? We're arguing over percentage points. So today's topics, we're going to start off with Nick Chubb. Dwain, all right, Rhys loves him. Dwain likes him pretty much, maybe like a friend. And I'm more in the Kareem Hunt. And so I was thinking, how do I set up the Nick Chubb conversation? Rhys and I have been binge watching CSI, the TV show, back in the olden days, Las Vegas. We haven't got to the season where there's this fetish of people liking heavy people. And it's called the Chubby Chasers episode. And so I thought, how much better could we be setting this up? Look at Rhys laughing. Then let Rhys, the Chubby Chaser, Nick Chubb chasing person, convince me of Nick Chubb's viability for this year. Dwain has to go to the bottle for this. He's got to get a drink of water.
Yeah, Rhys, I can't wait to hear what you have to say after, the setup by your dad.
Oh, man.
So offensive tackles have to chase the other Chubb in the NFL with Bradley Chubb.
Exactly. Since you're a Bronco fan, I actually have a Bronco shirt on this time, and he always has a Bronco shirt. So here's my argument, and you guys tell me how wrong I am. Okay.
Okay.
When Kareem Hunt came back from suspension, now there's no sure thing that he won't do something stupid this offseason or during the season anyway.
Oh, he already did, but we'll let that slide for now.
Right. I mean,
get COVID.
Right. There's nothing that we haven't seen any suspension-worthy activity yet, right? But since when he came back, their fantasy PPR points per game were almost dead even in that 8-game sample. And I'm saying, if one of them is a late first rounder in redraft and the other is a 5th rounder, give me the guy that's the 5th rounder. It's not that I'm anti-Chubb. I'm just pro Kareem Hunt. And I think that we forget how good he was with Kansas City. That's my stance. Rhys or Dwain, which one of you wants to tackle that first?
Oh, I'll let Rhys start us off, and I'll jump in and help.
Everybody's talking about how Hunt cuts into Chubb all the time, but but Chubb's carry percentage, like Dwain was talking about before the show, Chubb actually led the league in carry percentage for his team. And in fact, his carry percentage went higher when Kareem Hunt joined the team than it was on the 8 games beforehand. But also one of the main reasons why is facing the Buffalo defense and the New England defense is not going to help you score fantasy points.
So you think some of it's schedule?
Some of it was schedule last year. Some of it was just him being inefficient. He was the running back 3 in rush attempts inside the 5-yard line. He had 15 and could only score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's definitely due for positive regression. I agree with Rhys there. So, I mean, and Rhys is right. If you look at what happened after Kareem Hunt left, the threshold for an average, running back 1 each week from a rushing attempt percentage is right at 60%, 59.6% if you want to be exact. And so Chubb hit that in week 9, he hit it in week 10, week 11, week 12, he hit it, week 13, he hit it. He fell below it in week 14. He only had 56% of the carries, but then he was above it the final 3 weeks. So in 7 out of 8 weeks, he was clearly the lead runner. And when I say runner, that's me talking about the guy running the ball. People always give me a hard time. They're like, we love you say runner. But I'm trying to think runner and then pass receiving back. But there was an impact, to Chubb last year, to be fair. If we look at the whole picture, if you look at his snaps before Kareem Hunt came around, his snap shares were 70, 64, 99, 63, 83, 87, 65. So he was always in the RB1, RB2, an average running back one, if you look at it by week last season, was 68%. So Chubb was typically above or right around that. And then once, you had Kareem Hunt come back, he was fine the first week, 81%. But then after that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his games fell below. So there's definitely, I think, going to be a role, for Kareem Hunt. But I still think that Nick Chubb, with the improvements to the offensive line, and with the opportunity for the Browns offensive line to be better. And here, I'm just going to say Nick Chubb is, and I love Kareem Hunt. He's really good. So I don't want to sit here and act like this is Bash the Kareem Hunt show, because he's a fine running back. He really is. But what I'll say is Nick Chubb is the only running back in the history of Pro Football Focus grades for rushers back to 2007 to start both his first 2 seasons with a grade of over 90. And that's going back to looking at some really amazing running backs. And so the guys that have done that, there's 0. But if you look at other guys that have done really well over their first 2 seasons, they're typically it's a really good list to be on. I'm not going to say it's like 100%, you're never going to have a miss, but it's a really, really good list to be on. The other thing about Chubb that I love, that I think gives him, the continued upside here, it's his yards after contact. So if you think about a guy that can average 4 yards, he averaged 3.8 last year, and it's a very sticky stat. I know you guys had Scott Barrett on last year. So when you think about stats for a player, you want to try to think about, well, one, you want big sample sizes, and then you want, things that you can look at, and the sample size helps you take out the noise. If you start to slice and dice things too many different ways, you start to lose the predictive power, right, of your potential stat, and you'll have a lot of up and down, in your signal. But the other thing you want to look for are things that players truly own. And the way you know if a player truly owns something is the stats that consistently the year before predicts very well what the next year is going to be. So yards per carry doesn't work. Right. Why? Yards per carry doesn't work because the offensive line plays a huge role. Yards after contact, it's not that the offensive line doesn't – you can make an argument there's still a role, right? If there's penetration in the backfield and I can't even take a step forward, it's hard for me to break a tackle. So I don't want to say there's 0 noise from offensive line in that.
There's also
signal.
The opposite, right? Where the offensive line gets them 6 yards, and so there's only 2 more to be had.
Right. That can happen too. But for the most part, that stat is shown to be very predictive. The running back truly owns it year over year. And so with Chubb, he's at a 3.8. He's right there with guys like Derrick Henry who are at a 4. So if all of a sudden, if the Browns offensive line can go from 1.2 yards before contact last season to a 1.5, and, Rhys, you can name the additions they've made, to the offensive line through the draft and then through free agency, 2 really good tackles. I think there's a case to think that Nick Chubb could be the most efficient back in the league.
All right. So, Rhys, name the offensive line additions.
They signed Jack Conklin to a big deal, who's a zone blocking tackle, which will fit great with Kevin Stefanski's new system. And they drafted Jedrick Wills, who I thought was the best tackle coming out of college. Because, if you can pass block really well in the SEC, it's not going to be as big of a learning curve going into the NFL.
So the other piece on that Rhys always points out when I'm on the calling him a chubby chaser is Dwain chuckles at this. That's great. All right, so I argue that the pie is split. Rhys's argument is usually with Stefanski there, the pie is now bigger. Is that right, Rhys?
It's huge.
So why? What do you say that?
So if we go by Chubb's carry rate with Kareem Hunt there, which is 77%. Stefanski ran the ball 476 times last year with the Vikings. 77% of 476.
How many did that? How many did the Browns carry?
393.
So you're saying that there's 84 more carries in Minnesota last year than the Browns?
Right.
All right. So if you're saying if Chubb gets 77% of those, he gets 60 more carries, which gives him enough volume to push up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and also Hunt got exactly 77% of targets. In fact, he was on pace for 88 targets. And the other thing Stefanski really liked to do was run screens. In fact, his running backs had this tied for the second highest target share with 28%. So I'm not saying Hunt's going to go away. I'm saying both of them could be fantasy viable starters for running backs.
So Dwayne and I we had a conversation through Twitter. And I don't know if you remember this. Dwayne, basically my contention is if Hunt's role grows, I think it's because of the lack of a viable receiver 3, or something happens to Beckham, Landry's slow to come back, because there's not a lot of weapons in that offense. You can't really say it's Njoku. I like Austin Hooper better than most, but still, they'll have to figure out how to get Hunt on the field. What's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think their weapons are pretty good. I think Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry make up one of the better combinations as long as Landry's hit is okay. Beckham struggled through a core injury. Last year was really the first season ever where Odell Beckham Jr. struggled with, man and press coverage. And I have to believe that's something to do, with his body, not being right. And so I do think that there are options, besides Hunt, being on the field. Here's what's worrisome for me, about that scenario, right? If I want to try to say, I believe Hunt, they're going to find a way to get Hunt on the field. What are the ways that I can get Hunt on the field? I'm not taking Jarvis Landry off the field. I'm not taking Odell Beckham Jr. off the field.
Assuming he plays, though, you're making an assumption that he's not going to opt out, like that Wall Street Journal article.
Well, that, of course, changes everything, though, right? That's a whole different analysis. At that point, we need to come back and do another show. But right now, the assumption would be that those guys are all playing.
Right.
And if they don't, that changes it. So you got to set, based on what we think the team is going to be. Obviously, we're in a crazy year. But then I look at Austin Hooper. And then I think about the scheme itself. So like what Rhys was just talking about, how run heavy it was. The Vikings ran, 12 personnel more than any other team last year. And a lot of people point to Stefanski and go, oh, he runs 2 back sets more than anybody. Well, guess how many times it was actually 2 running backs on the field? 9 times. Yeah. Nine.
None with Cook and Madison.
Yeah. None with Cook and Madison.
It was never with Cook and Madison. That was Kareem. It was actually Abdullah that actually got those snaps. So it was always with a fullback. So here's the thing. When you think about Stefanski's scheme, it comes from Gary Kubiak, it's just like Kyle Shanahan's. They bring in, Janovich, right, to be the fullback. They've got this big power run game set up. So if you want to buy into Kareem Hunt getting enough of the pie, I think really it does need to come, he needs to get like 30% of the carries. And I actually did some research last night because somebody put out an awesome tweet that made me think. And so I went back as far as I could in the data I have. And I looked at all of the times that you've actually seen 2 running backs finish in the top 24 since 2008 was how far I could easily just query this, data. And it actually came out to 5.5. It was 21 times. So if you divide that by all the backfields, 32 teams every year over all those years, it comes out to a 5.5%. Honestly, higher than not great, but higher than what I thought. And then I went back and I looked at those players to say, okay, was this just like these superstar backfields? So I had them written down because I was doing this last night.
Johnson, right? That was one.
Nope. That was before. That was probably 2006. So I went back to 2008. That would have been a really good guess. But so Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman in 2016 and 17. Well, who was the coordinator? Kyle Shanahan. So that's your best model for this potentially happening. But here's how Tevin Coleman did it. It wasn't based on getting more work than what we're used to. It was on super high efficiency. He scored 8 rushing touchdowns while only having 35% of the carries. He averaged 13.6 yards per reception. That's insane for a receiver. And he had 3 receiving touchdowns on only 31 catches. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to be Alvin Kamara. I don't think so. I don't think you're going to see 70 catches for Kareem Hunt. I think you're going to see 40 catches for Kareem Hunt. And if he wants to pay off his ADP of round 6, beyond carrying the plus upside of being a league winner if Nick Chubb goes down, he's just going to have to be super efficient. Now, the good news is he's a player that's totally capable of doing that, right? I still think he's a top 10 talent as far as runners go in the league. And if you talk about him as a pass reception guy, he's probably in the top 5. And he has shown that he can be successful on the slot. My concern with that is this is a team that runs 12 personnel, 21 personnel. There's not a lot of room in the way they run their scheme, for this to be more than, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be a common set. I do think you'll see them on the field together because they want to keep the players happy. And I think they'll find ways to make that work. But I will tell you this, if it's all the time and it's because he needs to be in the slot, then something else is going wrong with their season. Because back to your point, Rhys, what do they want to do? They want to run the ball. And so I don't think they'll get to run it as much as Minnesota last year because that was extreme. You need your defense to be really good and cooperate with you to keep game scripts. You need Baker Mayfield to get better. He can't turn the ball over early in games. That'll mess a game script up like super, super fast. And I think in those cases, that's where it's really going to be the biggest risk to Chubb. If all of a sudden Baker comes out and throws a pick six on the first drive, and then the second drive, they go 3 and out, and the other team comes down and kicks a field goal, and they're down 10-0, and now you're in mid-second quarter, how long will they stick with the run, or how soon are they going to start to go to their 2-minute offense? And I think in that role, that will be Kareem Hunt in the 2-minute offense.
Yep. And I will say, and this is just so the one thing I dislike about fancy Twitter, and I'll tell you because I'm going to play this part on your stats, okay? If somebody does the hard work and does all this math and they come up with an educated conclusion, and then you have the people in the peanut gallery saying that's too low, that's too high, so on and so forth. But I think your receptions for Hunt are considerably low. I think it's going to be higher given how many snaps he's going to have and what kind of situations. I think he's going to have more targets, more receptions.
Yeah, I just think it's hard to put something in place that predicts that, to be honest. So if we go back and we look at the closest offense to this, it is going to be Kyle Shanahan's offense in 16 and 17. Tevin Coleman is not as good as Kareem Hunt, but Tevin Coleman was really good in those 2 years. He was in the top 24 runners both years, and it came on efficiency. The problem is if you start putting Hunt on the field with Chubb, you lose your blocker. You become more predictable. Kareem Hunt, they tried that last year. He's a terrible blocker. I mean, you want Janovich in there to be your lead blocker. Your 12 personnel is also the way you block. Everything that offense does is set up off of the run, making pass or run always look the same. That's the beauty of that offense. That's why it's lasted so long. That's why it's stood the test of time. It has new wrinkles, but this offense has been ran since the 90s, and it still works.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I just think Hunt will be used in more passing down situations than expected. That's it.
I expect Hunt to get most of the passing down situations.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
No, I said I expect Hunt to get most of the passing down situations, but I don't think that equals more than 40 catches. I don't think his routes ran per game are going to get high enough. He's going to need to be higher than that to get used like that, unless they're going to use him like a Kamara, and I just don't see them doing that. I don't see them doing that. I think he's going to have games where they're behind, and you'll get some spike weeks from him. But if you're trying to predict every week what you're getting out of Kareem Hunt, I think you're going to be on a bit of a roller coaster.
I don't disagree with it, but I think that comes in the ADP. But I also think that he's going to get more than 2.5 receptions a game, which is what 40 is. I think it's – anyway, Rhys, what would you think in there? This is my point about everybody arguing over the probabilities. Everybody wants to say – No, I think it's 73% chance that he gets it. None of us will know until the games are played, and even then there's this COVID risk. The Browns are a risky team. Mayfield's volatile. Jarvis Landry could be late coming back. Beckham is the definition of volatile. Him and Antonio Brown have their faces on that cereal box. And, it's just one of those things. What are you thinking?
Well, the Vikings ran screens a ton of the time with Cook. And so I could also see if they ran that same type of thing with Hunt, he could get very high production. And
efficiency. He could be efficient on those, right?
And he also would have volume because Cook had, I think, somewhere around 85 to 90 targets last year, which it was really good, but he just didn't score on any of those targets through his 14 games.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also,
and that's my problem with giving Hunt these big reception numbers is if I go back and I even look at how much the Vikings used those running backs those years, and if I go back and look at how much Shanahan used Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman, they had 11% and 7% of the targets, so 18% together, and then the next year was 15% together, and then I still have to feed Odell Beckham Jr. I still have to feed Jarvis Landry. I can't just assume those guys aren't going to be in, right? I have to feed Austin Hooper. I've got to get David Njoku is going to be on the field because I run 12, so he won't be a complete forgotten. He'll definitely be further down in the pecking order than Kareem Hunt. But I expect Kareem Hunt to be 3rd to 4th in the pecking order for pass receptions, and I have him and Nick Chubb really splitting them. I just, I think he'll have to find ways to get on the field more to meet your expectation, and it could happen. But I think the way that would happen is if all of a sudden the Browns aren't that good. What I did want to go back to, though, is Nick Chubb. Guess who the best outside zone runner in all of the NFL was last year, Rhys?
Chubb.
That's the way
he received a grade of an 88, is the absolute best in the NFL. He averaged 4.5 yards after contact, 5.9 yards per carry. He got a first down or a touchdown on 22% of those carries. So he had 670 yards last year, and so that's ranking by grade. If you want to look at it by yards, first place was Derrick Henry with 744 yards. So, and guess who was third? Dalvin Cook. So it's to your point earlier, it's a great schematic fit for Nick Chubb, and that's going to be the problem, for Kareem Hunt getting on the field. Is if things are going well, Chubb is so good in this scheme, and they want to tie everything to their play action pass game and what they're doing. I find it really hard to see that, we're going to have Hunt up at like 60, 70 catches still with all the other mouths to feed. That's just me doing the math. It could certainly happen, but I would say I would definitely, if I was doing probabilities, I would put it definitely below 40% that he's going to be at like 60 catches.
Yeah, I would put 60 as the over-under. So you and I aren't that far off on that. The other thing that I would put as part of the thought process is I expect the Browns to be worse than expected. I don't expect them to be they're the third best in their division. Who do they play this year, Rhys?
They play the AFC South, which is
bad division.
Yeah, bad defensive division, except for the 3 good players.
Yeah,
and then I believe they play the NFC
South.
No, West plays South, East plays West. So I think they played the NFC East this year, which is another
soft
division. So you're only looking at 25% of your games against the Ravens and Steelers.
Did they win 7 games though?
Redskins, Giants,
Cowboys. Never mind. Sorry, couldn't resist, Dwain.
Oh, that's okay.
We'll call that a pick 'em.
How many games do you think they win, Dwain? And then we'll move on.
I think they're probably an 8-8 team. But I think they could be as good as 10-6, and I think they could be as bad as 6-10. I think a lot of it does hinge on Baker Mayfield. Yeah. I do think the scheme is going to stabilize them. I think what Stefanski will do is he's going to get rid of a lot of the things where you're just shooting yourself in the foot, basically. And they'll try to manage what they're doing with Baker. And I think, they'll try to just put him in better situations where they're not just literally throwing Baker out there and saying, hey, we gave you the weapons, now just go execute. There's going to be a lot more of a schematic, approach to what they're doing in a scheme that's proven, to confuse off, opposing defenses for years. So I think that's going to help Baker, but, I would still put them, right down the middle. They are in a tough division. The one thing I would say is if things go bad, right, if it's a 6-10 season, then all those carries we think that are going to be split won't be there because they're not going to be able to keep a 53-47 kind of run to pass, or pass to run split. All of a sudden then you're going to be looking at like a 58-42, 58% pass, 42% run. And if that happens, that's going to be bad news for Chubb, and it'll be better news for Kareem Hunt if that's the way it goes. So if someone thinks the Browns are going to be a 5-11 or 6-10 team, then I definitely would agree that gives Kareem Hunt, more value, and you definitely shouldn't be drafting Nick Chubb. Like I have Nick Chubb in my 3rd tier of runners. So the way I tier my runners, I've got elite talent with elite utilization coming. Then I've got unproven talent with elite utilization. There's a clear path. That's Miles Sanders, Kenyon Drake, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then I've got a group of runners, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb. I'm probably leaving one other one out of there. But those guys are all in the 2nd round where they're great talents. They're actually better than the 2 talent than probably all 3 talents I named in front of them. But they're tied to game scripts, right? If things don't go well because we don't know of their usage in the passing game, they could be either A, really bumpy roller coaster rides up and down, or they could really just be completely deflated. Now, at the same time, if everything breaks right for one of those teams, and you saw it last year with Derrick Henry, they could lead the league in rushing and score 12 touchdowns. Like, would it surprise anyone if Nick Chubb had 1,500 yards and 12 touchdowns? No, it could happen, but the Browns will have to be good for it to happen.
And that's where it gets a little a little dicey for me. The other
As much as I love Chubb, I almost never get him because I'm not taking those. I don't like the price of those runners in the second round. I'm definitely going to get my exposure. But, I love the player. I just wish he didn't have, Kareem Hunt there, and I wish I felt stronger about their ability to keep game scripts manageable.
So the other thing, and I'll kick it to Rhys, and then let's move on to a different topic. I enjoy this, and especially with the chubby chaser next to me. But, getting 2 tackles for an outside zone team is a huge upgrade that people gloss over.
Yeah.
Ability to control the edge. The other thing that concerns me about Njoku is his ability to block, his willingness to block. Hooper's okay. I think the Bryant will be fine. It's just that, we put 12 personnel on Stefanski, but Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph were very good blockers. And so,
yeah, but Njoku's blocking has actually been, I have to go back and look at it again, but it was better than Irv Smith's last year. Rudolph's a really good blocker. Hooper's an okay blocker.
right.
So as a tandem, they're just as good as what the Vikings had last year. And again, they're going to mix it up. They use those guys, as receiving weapons, as well off of the play action. The biggest upgrade they made in a blocking standpoint outside of the tackles is Janovich. So you're going to see plenty of 21 personnel, and I fully expect for Nick Chubb to be the primary guy you see in those sets. I think you're going to see some Kareem Hunt. Basically, here's what I have Hunt as. Every third drive, he's going to give Chubb a breather, and he's going to get the 2-minute passing work. And then I think he'll get an occasional wrinkle, like you said, some slot. But still, you're better off, most likely, still even putting their third receiver in than Kareem Hunt when you want a guy that's going to run the full route tree and run corner routes and fades and all that kind of stuff. I like Hunt. Now, you could get a better matchup with Hunt out there.
Yeah.
Are they going to leave a corner out there? Are they going to put, a linebacker out there, that kind of thing? So they could definitely play that cat and mouse game. I think overall where Hunt will be is, he'll be the change of pace guy. He'll be a wrinkle, and he'll be, if game strips are out of hand or they're in hurry up, he'll be the guy.
The hurry up is where I'm saying I think that volume's large. What are you thinking, Rhys? And close us out on this topic.
Yeah, Rhys, you have to pick now. Are you still as high on Chubb? Because if you don't think the Browns are going to be good, you got to reduce your carries.
I am very high on Chubb. In fact, I have him on the same. I have him in the same tier as like Alvin Kamara, because Kamara won't get the rushing production, but he'll get the receiving. But it's the flip side with Chubb.
Pete, how much more is a reception worth than a carry though?
3+. It's like
So
3
factor that in.
Yeah, and so that's the other reason I'm more of a Hunt guy, because it doesn't take near as many.
Yeah, no, I was going to tell you guys earlier, just real quick. So, listen to these guys that made it in. You just nailed it. These guys that made it in as RB2s, these names, 2013, Joik Bell.
Detroit.
Joik Bell, and he did it in 2011 as well, right? And it was mostly, he had 52 catches. It wasn't like it was this huge thing, but then he added 3, rushing touchdowns and a few receiving touchdowns to go along with it. Gio Bernard in 2014, five rushing touchdowns, which was a big-time outlier for his number of carries, but then only 43 catches, but 2 receiving touchdowns. So where I will say with Hunt is he gives you the upside to easily score 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, and he could score 3 or 4 receiving touchdowns. That's why I say Tevin Coleman's the best comp, but you're still betting on longer odds, that it happens. I mean, 5.5% of the time it happens, but I mean, obviously I would say it's higher for this team given the talent.
Right. We'll let Rhys finish, but you say 5.5%. That means it happens 1.5 times every year.
Yeah.
And so all I'm saying,
but it also doesn't happen many years, right? You can't just use an average.
I know.
Over half of the years it didn't happen at all. Actually, like 60% of the years it didn't happen. So it's like, and the other thing you got to remember, you've also got a huge schematic thing going on here, like with New Orleans and some of these other teams that have done it multiple times. And so they push that number, they inflate the number in a way that most teams can't replicate.
Right. With Ingram and Kamara and all that. What do you tie the bow around it?
Well, as Chubb's not going to get much receiving production, but he never has. Only like 24.2% of all his fantasy points have been receiving through the air. But also, great touchdown positive regression is going to happen as he scored the same amount of rushing touchdowns as he did as a rookie with over 100 carries more.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
Many of those. What was the stat you were throwing? That what's a percent? How many carries do you have inside the 5?
He had 15 carries inside of 5 with only 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he only had a 19% score rate inside the 5. The year before, he was 56%, and he's built to do that. Typically, guys that are thick, yards after contact, that have good feet, which he has all those things. He got unlucky last year. He got unlucky, and to your point earlier, he also, there were some major offensive line problems. So, and they did not run a good scheme inside the 5. If you go back and look at some of their play selection, there's actually a great article from Eric Eager over at PFF that went and broke down play by play what they did, and how that compared to what other teams do in the league there based on the talent they have. So yeah, I'm 100%. I think Rhys is right. I think 10 to 12 touchdowns is very reasonable.
Rhys is usually right. You have anything else on that?
I
Ready to
don't-
move on from your chubby chasing ways?
I don't think it's fair to say Kareem Hunt makes Chubb unlucky if you're trying to draw the correlation between Chubb's decline over to Kareem Hunt.
I just think he got more receptions, which padded his fancy stats, which made them more equal.
Yes.
That's my interpretation. All right,
Yep.
Let's quickly talk. Before the show, Dwain gave us a topic, and that is the viability of J.K. Dobbins. And so I'm in the category of Dobbins may very well be the most talented back in this last draft. Yeah, I mean, we could have a conversation. Is it CEH? Is it Taylor? But he's in a great rushing offense. He's second banana behind Ingram, who's on the last year of his contract. Ingram's over 30, right?
Right.
Yep.
What are you thinking, Rhys? Tee this up for Dwain.
I really like Dobbins at his price because he has a tremendous upside if Ingram goes down because he's over 30. But also, there's Gus Edwards had 133 rush attempts last year as their running back 2/3 if you count Lamar Jackson as the running back with over 700 yards. But the reason why he didn't score as much was the fact that, Gus Edwards is not the breakaway player J.K. Dobbins is. And with over 1,000 yards, rushing yards not accounted for by either Ingram or Lamar, there's plenty of volume with Dobbins' talent. Should be a great recipe for fantasy success.
Plus his rushing scheme fits with what the Ravens do.
Right.
He's not let's beat him, let's bounce everything out. He loves hit the quick hitters, the traps, the draws, things up the middle. Dwain,
Rhys, what do you have Dobbins at carries wise in your projections?
I'd say he's probably going to be in line for maybe 100 carries, 150 carries, probably tops. Probably 250 if Ingram goes down early on.
How many receptions? Or are you giving those to Justice Hill?
I'm giving those to Justice Hill because Ingram led the team in targets with 29. So you're not going to be able to count on much.
Yeah, how many receiving touchdowns did he score on his
5.
26 catches? Yeah.
How many Rhys?
He scored 5, but most of them were very, very short, like 7-yarders against the Browns and stuff, Texans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think like 3 of them. If you go back and watch them, like there's literally no one around him.
Yeah.
Because they're all worried about what else Lamar Jackson's doing.
Put 3 guys as a spy.
Yeah, people think I make this up about him knowing about this stuff, but it's quite humorous, really. So Dwain, are you Dobbins in redraft is what? 6th round pick, 7th round pick, something like that?
Yeah, he's a 6th round pick, and so here's my overall issue. I don't disagree with anything that Rhys just said, actually. So we've got him really close. I've got Dobbins at 147 carries. I've got him taking on slightly more than what Edwards had because I think he's more talented. And I've got Ingram at 187 carries. So 35% to Ingram, 27.5% to Dobbins, 5% to Justice Hill, the rest to Lamar, right? And so if you look at it, I agree. I like Dobbins from a standpoint of where his upside could take him. I do think, he's going to provide some value, to be a bye week filler. He could occasionally be a flex depending on how deep of a league you're in. If you're in a 12 or a 14 man league that starts, 3 wide receivers and 2 flex and 3 flex, some of those type leagues, I think Dobbins is definitely, he's somebody that you can probably just throw in your lineup and leave him in there. I think otherwise it's going to be a little bit harder. And my take on it is it's not so much against Dobbins. There's a disconnect, right, in ADP value in the mid rounds where all of a sudden wide receivers that are going in the same range are worth drastically more in proven roles, and still young players, right? They have a lot of upside. So a lot of it's more of a draft strategy thing for me personally. So what I'm doing with Dobbins, I draft enough teams that when I see Dobbins slide into round 7, I'll take him. If he goes in round 6 or 5, I don't. I'm really doing the same thing with Kareem Hunt. I have them both in a tier in my Pro Football Focus tiers, and they're basically the win your league tier. And you can still build really good teams with them. But what I tell people is don't take these guys and expect them to give you, without some help, the production that you could be getting from the receivers that you're passing right on around them. Now, they do give you another thing that the receivers may not, which is they may give you huge upside. So as long as people plan for that, and then they wrap back around and they create their roster in a way where then later they may take a safer player or something else that they could plug in for the first few weeks and see how things are going to go, I think you're fine. And then, who knows? Kareem Hunt just explodes or Dobbins explodes and you're great. You're set. I think some people, though, if they haven't thought through this, they're going into a draft just counting on Dobbins being a flex play for them right out of the gate. And I think that's problematic. And basically where you're taking him, if you don't know how to plan for the rest of your draft, that's essentially what you're doing. And so that's really my lesson because of the disconnect. So what happens is early on in ADP, the values of the players you're taking are very equal. And then all of a sudden, receiver value stays up here, running back value starts to drop, but their ADPs aren't. They're staying together. And so, what's happening there is I want to be buying from the bucket of commodities that I think, are more valuable. And so that's the way, I approach that. And to be honest, what that means that basically makes me think about the way I want to start my draft. Right.
Yep.
So it is better to start with your runners. And if you can get 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, I think that really does help because then you can allow a Dobbins to slide. You can allow Kareem Hunt to slide and man, your draft plan works out. 7th round, pull the trigger, you add them to something you already love, but you're not counting on it. But you're also not sitting there waiting, hoping, man, I'm hoping Kareem Hunt makes it to me. I hope this other guy doesn't like him more than me because if he doesn't, I don't like this other guy, or maybe maybe those 2, I think those 2 guys, again, are in that same tier. And I do believe they can be part of a winning strategy. It's just a matter of, you got to look, every year's different in the way these drafts shake out and what players are being and what positions are being overvalued and undervalued. And so that's really more of a place where I'm coming from. I think Rhys, I love actually where you've got Dobbins projected. I think you and I see pretty much, eye to eye on it. One thing I will say that was really interesting, I did go back and look at this because, and you guys mentioned this earlier, we get so excited about, and I'm guilty of this. I get excited about young players because, we love the game and we want to see the new guys come in, just like Nick Chubb from 2 years ago. I've loved Nick Chubb, since his very earliest days, back at Georgia, and I've been waiting on him to be in the NFL forever. And then here he is, and I love him. Well, it's the same way with a guy, Dobbins, I wasn't as huge, around, but I really did like him, and he landed, like you guys said, in a great spot. The problem is people, they get so excited. I think sometimes that can make a guy, overvalued. And if it's all you've been thinking about all this time and then they finally get here, you can kind of have the blinders on a little bit. And that doesn't mean the player, is any less talented. But if we were to go back to 2007 and we were to look at all the running backs taken in the 2nd round, how many of them scored in the top 24 in a PPR format in their rookie season?
Can I tell you something that'll blow your mind? In 2007, I wrote that same article for Roto Worlds magazine.
That's awesome. I wonder if our percentages compare.
Rhys and I can look to our left and see
Don't take rookies, a 5-year study.
Yes, exactly. And even don't take, I'm looking to my left, sorry, the risk of taking 2nd-year running backs because they all get overdrafted, in the second in year 2. But anyway.
So this is specifically rookies. Yes. From a 2nd round. So this study goes back to 2007.
It's really small.
Any guesses, Rhys?
What's you're saying?
What's the percentage of these guys that finish in the top 24 at all 2nd round running backs selected since 2007?
7 to 12% range.
Yeah, that'd be right about where I would say because Le'Veon Bell didn't hit in the 2nd round. Neither did Derrick Henry their first year.
But Le'Veon, he made it. He made it into the top 24 in a PPR format.
Dalvin
To your
Cook,
point, he wasn't as good as he was the next year.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook was injured a lot, but they're still the 2017 draft class for running backs was just incredible. So there's probably a couple guys I'm missing.
This
in
goes
there
all the
that
way to
hit.
07 though. So I'm going to say, I'll say 10 to 15%.
Yeah. So there were 11 out of the 27.
Oh.
But I went, so it's actually, it's not terrible, but then you got to break it down, right? Again, you guys know my slogan, context matters. So let's talk about Amir Abdullah. You remember that, Jeff? Remember Amir Abdullah? He landed in a wide open backfield. He was the second round pick. Joyke Bell had been injured the year before. Reggie Bush was gone. Literally, it was supposed to be Amir Abdullah's backfield. It was wide open. It was a miss.
And I avoided
Bishop
him.
Sankey.
I avoided him because he has bad vision.
Bishop Sankey.
Yeah.
Miss. Wide open backfield.
Washington.
Right? Brandon Jackson, 2007. Wide open backfield. Got beat out by an undrafted rookie, Ryan Grant. Might have been 7th round pick. You might remember, Jeff.
Yep.
Ryan Grant. But so 3 of them landed in wide open situations and they couldn't hit. Now there were 6 of the hits came from wide open situations. Literally you landing somewhere where there was not an incumbent starter that was any good. The rest of them I bucketed into either aging starter or they had a stud or a solid starter in front of them. So here's the problem. Out of all those times when you landed behind even an aging starter or a stud or a solid starter, never did any of those except for one actually finish in the top 24. And so that's the challenge for Dobbins. And I like where you have him projected. And if you plan for your draft the right way, great. What I just try to caution people against is they get so excited. They just immediately they just mark him in. He's going to be top 24. He's going to be top 24. Chances are he's probably not.
He may, but see, we look at, all right, I'm going to go way off script. All right. I think people look at end of year top 24, and I don't think that matters in fantasy. I always go back to, so I took the Ingram Dobbins combo in the Scott Fish Bowl. I think that was a great move. I kind of fell into it. But what I was getting at is that Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson year, they both finished very high, but in spurts. They were each dominant in different spurts because of injury. And I would say Dobbins needs an Ingram injury to be lights out, where Hunt doesn't. Fair? Yeah, but I think
I agree. I think the chance of Hunt being good without an injury to Chubb is definitely greater than Dobbins without an injury to Ingram.
Right. But I'm just saying Dobbins, if you went receiver early or Kelsey early or something other than running back in the first or second, right? I think getting the Dobbins-Ingram combo is a great way to have upside and a solid floor every week.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Because Ingram's what?
I'm leery of those strategies because you have to make them pay off. And in a lot of the drafts, as soon as you take one, the other one goes the next pick. So you got to, as long as you have a backup plan to who your Ingram or your Dobb, it depends on which way you're going to take them and who that you prioritize. Most of the medium to high stakes stuff that I've done so far with like the sharper players, I think I've maybe seen 1 or 2 drafts where it worked out. One of them was where just Ingram kept falling and I took him. It was like, I didn't even own Dobbins, but like the guy that took Dobbins in the 6th, I got Ingram fell to it was the 7th or 8th round in this one for some weird reason, which was rare. And I was like, I'll take Mark Ingram, but I think you just got to make sure you can execute on it. I think if you can, I like it.
I like that better than I like the Chubb Hunt combo.
That's too expensive. I don't want that combo.
Given the prices is all I was saying.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But when I mention Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson, people forget that was a top 10, top 5 pick along with the 5th rounder. Larry Johnson snuck into the 4th round that year in fantasy drafts. And I'm saying that the people that took both, as stupid as that sounds now, it still paid off because we forget how great Priest Holmes was in that limited and Larry Johnson in that limited. I'm not saying Hunt and Chubb or any of those are going to be the same.
Yeah, I would say the best example we would have like to kind of compare to this Dobbins. I think that's a really good one. But another one was Brian Westbrook. He was a little older than Ingram is now, but he was long in the tooth. You had LaShawn McCoy coming in. And LaShawn McCoy, back then, there wasn't as much good information out there. So, these players didn't always go as early. The Larry Johnson, Priest Holmes was a very rare one. For the most part, these kind of Dobbins guys used to go in the 8th round of fantasy drafts. Now they go in the 6th round, so because you have players that are very aggressive. It's like what happened to poker. You had a normal way of playing poker, and then you had a hyper-aggressive crowd join. And that same crowd has joined in with football, and you have these young minds like Rhys that are pushing the edges of it. And so, you have to adapt. And so when you look at LaShawn McCoy that year, that's a really good example. He ended up hitting, as that year he finished he was the 32nd running back. But if you looked at him, to your point, Jeff, down the stretch over the last 8 games, he was worth much more than the 32 overall. He was averaging in the top 12 backs every single week, much like what we saw with Miles Sanders last year after, Jordan Howard got hurt. So the Brian Westbrook one, is a really good example, of where you had a guy that wasn't completely done, but he was getting a little older. And, he got hurt. He only played 8 games that year. And then LaShawn McCoy was on his way. I think you do carry a similar type of thing to that, or even the one we just mentioned, the Jordan Howard injury last year, with Miles Sanders. My only point to people is what you already said, Jeff, is that you are counting on something else to happen to pay the ultimate value of the price. Because if you're not, I guess the way I look at it is he going to get 20 more carries than Chase Edmonds? Yeah. But I could get Chase Edmonds in the 10th round. And if I think of Dobbins as a lottery pick, meaning he's going to win my league if Ingram goes down, well, then I have to compare what's my opportunity cost. What else can I take in that round where I could then just turn around and take Pollard or Edmonds, or heck, Darrington Evans, a guy that doesn't get talked about enough. That's right now, as far as we know, the handcuff to Derrick Henry. And we know that, running back skill is important, but at the same time, there's a lot to just do with the volume as long as they're going to get the carries. And so we have these clear handcuff situations. And that's what I try to think through from a game theory and strategy standpoint. Am I better off taking Dobbins in the 6th? And I do like him slightly better than those guys. And I think he's going to hold more individual value. But at the same time, I'm probably not going to be super comfortable starting him, just like I wouldn't want to start those other guys unless there's an injury to the starter. So then my thought process becomes, I might rather take in the 6th round T.Y. Hilton and turn around and get Alexander Madison in the 9th and Tony Pollard in the 10th. And now I got 2 lottery tickets, and I added another starter to a flex spot with T.Y. Hilton. As long as he's healthy, I feel really good about every week. So I think those are the kind of things. For me, it's not always so much. The projections are huge. And what I'll tell people, because people ask me all the time, how do you get into doing projections? How did you do it? I'm Jeff. You probably have a story to tell about it. Rhys, you're getting into it now. What I tell people, the best thing from doing projections is you learn so much going through the process if you do it right. Because you study the teams in and out. You learn everything. Like Rhys, you can name off all this stuff because you've studied it so much and you know it so well. People that don't do that, that's an edge they don't have. And so while I think the projections themselves are valuable, what's even more valuable is all that other context you pick up. And then the next part of it is now I got to go apply that to a plan of how I actually win a draft with it. And so that's the thing. You have to think of the trade-offs. What's my opportunity cost of Dobbins versus doing one of those other strategies? And both, what's funny is both could win leagues.
Right.
It's not an either or. It's not always an either or.
Yeah. And there is no, as much as people want one, do I do this early? Do I do this? Do I do that? There isn't one way. I will say this. I like my team builds not going quarterback or tight end early. Mm-hmm. I like my team builds when I can hammer the receiver position 4th through 8th round with 1 or 2 exceptions and load up on that position. I'm just saying that's what I like on my teams.
That's a great year to do that.
And
because you could start with Adam Thielen in round 4.
Exactly.
I mean, and he's going to be, I have him ranked as my number 8 receiver, I think, right now in PPR. So yeah.
Yeah, him or Juju. And for tight end, just because we got to start tidying this up, and we want y'all back on. We enjoy these conversations, but I like the tight end thought process of grabbing 2. So I think that you have the top 2 guys that are excellent, Kelsey and Kittle.
Right.
And then I don't even put Ertz in that next. I don't think he's alone. I think you have that Ingram, and all those other guys, which I avoid. I think they're overpriced. I'd rather have two of the Jarwin, Herndon, Fant, Hawkinson,
Hurst.
Hooper, whomever, because I don't think Hooper at his whatever 10th, 12th round price is that much worse than an Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, Waller with Winton there, and now they have good receivers, Jared Cook, even Zach Ertz, given Goddard's emergence last year. Goddard was a tight end 1 last year.
Tight end 11 in points per game.
Yeah.
But I also but going back to his vein on opportunity cost, Evan Ingram's now a 6th round pick, which, I mean, I get it if you're going to get elite production, but I'd rather get it for 16 games than for 8 games.
Yeah, might as well have to get Caden Smith late. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that, Dwayne? And then we'll tidy it up from there.
I've done some builds similar to that, and to be honest, I've liked them. I've also grown fond of taking it. If I can get Kittle or Kelsey in the 2nd round, I will. I'm willing to do it. I feel better about them and the positional, advantage they give me. And I feel better about their situations than a lot of the players going in the 2nd round. It's funny the way the draft works. I love the 1st round. They're like pick 6. I like the back half of the 1st round. The first part of the 2nd round, I love the players, but I'm a little leery. And so in some of those situations, I've taken the tight end and felt really good about it. And then I turn around to your point, and a lot of times a guy that I've targeted a lot, this year, and Matt Waldman and I talked about this on his podcast, this past Sunday. And we didn't know this coming in, but James Conner is a guy that, we both target. If you look at what Mike Tomlin's done, James Conner just needs to be healthy. That's all. And gimme. Now, that's a big question. The guy's missed a lot of games every year. So, he's had health concerns. But I like James Conner in a rebounding offense. Actually, I think he can score just as much as a lot of those. I think he's going to score as much. He'll outscore some of the backs that are going in the 2nd round on a per-game basis, right? You might have to deal with not having him for 4 weeks. But I've really loved – that's been one I've really liked where I've gone Kamara, come back, and I went Kittle, and then I went Connor, and then did what you talked about. I just stacked all those receivers. If I can get like a Thielen to fall to me, then turn around the next round and take A.J. Brown, more of an upside, kind of guy. Thielen's like your steady guy. Then you get your upside play. And then you're coming back. You guys know the guy. You still got a shot like in the next round at like a DK Metcalf. And then you got your older guys the next round, your T.Y. Hiltons and even A.J. Green, at some point becomes somebody that you can consider. So I do love pounding the receivers right in the middle. And I haven't taken quarterback very often. Where I will save a bullet for quarterback is when Dak slides, because I have Dak rated in the same tier as Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes this year. So when Dak does slide into the 7th or 8th, those are the drafts where I kind of let that dictate it to me, and then I just figure out how I'm going to fix it after. I'm just like, well, I know I need this thing, but I've told myself when he slides to the 7th or 8th round, I'm taking him, and I do. And then I just figure the rest out.
Hollywood Brown and Emmanuel Sanders, I like much.
I love Hollywood,
but much later than where people are. Sanders has been a stud everywhere, and now he gets the best quarterback play, the best offense that he's been in, and so. Anyway.
Yeah, people forget like what, even like a Ted Ginn, showed flashes like 2-3 years ago, and then there have been guys come in there. I think that signing hurts Jared Cook a little bit. I think Cook is the guy. Yeah, Cook's inside the 12 or inside the 20 and inside the 10 numbers are still going to always be good because Breeze likes him and he likes the tight end there. But I think that Sanders is going to get, I think that Sanders is a 3rd guy in the offense. I think it's going to be Thomas, Kamara, and Sanders are probably really close in target share next.
And yeah, all I'm saying is if Sanders is your receiver 4, because you went quarterback in the 7th and then you took some of those upside running backs, and now you're at Sanders.
Yeah, because he's so much cheaper. Yeah, I agree. I think Sanders' price is wonderful.
Yeah. What are you thinking, Rhys, as we get close up?
I'd rather have Hollywood Brown than Emmanuel Sanders just because of the upside play with Andrews can't stay healthy, plus he has very high risk of COVID with his type 1 diabetes. And if he goes out and Hollywood could stay healthy, he's already shown flashes of what he can do. With with his first 2 targets in the NFL in the first half, going for bombs against a good Miami secondary. Well, maybe not good, but Minkah Fitzpatrick, Rashad Jones, and Xavier Howard isn't exactly
Chump.
No, it's pretty good.
So, Dwain, we want you back on soon. This is our longest pod. We usually keep them to 30 minutes, but we've been excited on this conversation. Hopefully,
No, it's okay. I was
And
excited to join you guys. I
the
appreciate
young
you having me
lad.
on.
I will say, as we go on, and next time through, he'll take a bigger role, and he'll become greater. I'll become less, and it's all right. And so we appreciate you coming in, and so you know, he and I balance each other okay, and we enjoy talking football with whomever. And so it's great talking to you. Great having you on. I hope you'll come back in the near future, you know, if you're so inclined.
No, I enjoyed it. I'd love to come back on.
Thank you, Rhys. Thank you, Dwain. You guys have a great one, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.